Okay. Let's talk about the rewriting fallacy.
All right.
I've rewritten my script 10 times. It's perfect. You said do it 10 times, it's been done 10 times.
right. Well, the reason this is on the list is because most people have a misguided, or not most people. I keep saying that, and it's not what I mean. But many people have a misguided notion about what rewriting is, and as a result, they wind up just sort of editing and swirling words around the page. And I mean, if you spend 2 hours fixing typos and addressing grammar errors and punctuation problems and stuff like that, changing to the and those sorts of things, you're not rewriting. You're just kind of swirling words around the page. Because of what I just said about first drafts and how they're just meant to be mind vomit, if you're really rewriting, you are, especially in the early stages, you're generally needing to bring anywhere from 30 to 50% new material to the draft. That means new ideas for scenes. It means new characters, new character interactions, new set piece moments, whatever the case may be.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not bringing that much new material in the early drafts, you're probably not effectively rewriting. You probably think you are, but you're really just swirling words around the page.
Can I back up a little bit right now?
You may do whatever you'd like, man.
Anything?
Are you cold?
Anything?
It is a little cold.
I'm holding back. I'm feeling insecure.
By the way, we didn't address this, but I guess maybe because of my choice of shirt tonight, you couldn't wear the shirt that you've worn for the first two interviews, because we would both be in blue.
Yeah.
So I hope that didn't throw a curveball at you. You have to new shirt. For
My
the
mom
interview.
wanted me to wear a green sweater today. What do you want me to tell you? Wow, I'm thrown off. I'm thrown off now. Okay, no.
Good, that was the master plan.
Backing up. Okay, the rewriting process and having to add 30 to 40% new material. I'd like to get into that and maybe talk a little bit, take a break from the list and get into what that means on a nuts and bolts level. So talk about how the screenwriting process is different from, let's say, a novel or a short story. What it is about what demands a screenplay has that are different than other kinds of writing, how it is that things need to be presented in a screenplay that's different than other forms of literature, and then wrap that into what it is about the rewriting process that you're brainstorming to add to a screenplay.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. If I miss any of that,
I'll help you out.
Well, the first thing I heard you say was, "What's the difference between screenwriting and, say, writing a novel?"
Yeah, we've already addressed.
And we've already addressed that a little bit.
We've addressed that a little bit, but now I'm talking about the actual writing of it. I'm sort of baiting you here.
Thank God somebody is.
Yeah. In that, it's about action.
Yeah, I mean that is the major.
Not as a genre.
No. I know exactly what you mean.
Right.
I mean, screenplays are about communicating on a conceptual level and communicating through behavior and action, not through inner monologue, not through dialogue, language, right? That's one of the first things that's hard for people to grasp, to get used to, is this idea that dialogue is secondary in a movie. It's not that it isn't important. It's just that there are other, more dynamic ways that the medium allows us to communicate information. And if a character is going to say something, then it better be pretty important. It better reveal something about who that character is and who that character wants. It better be the most interesting way to effectively communicate whatever needs to be communicated in that moment. Whereas in a play, for example, a stage play, language is far more important, obviously. Language is the primary way that you are communicating the story in a stage play. And in a novel, a lot of it has to do with the inner life of the character, and having the ability to discuss. I mean, and I know we have some novelists listening tonight, and I am not a novelist, so again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes, because that's not my area of expertise. But if we're talking about the differences in the way things get communicated, and again, we talked about this earlier, certainly in a novel, you have the freedom to discuss interior of a person. And in a screenplay, you can't, because you have to stick to.
So how would you do it in a screenplay?
So the way you would do it in a screenplay is,
Can you use Silence of the Lambs? I mean, that just came to mind because that's you're the reason why is because you're talking about the psychology of a serial.
you know
killer.
what? I'm going to use another example, if you don't mind, just
don't mind.
because it just popped into my head, and it's one that I've used a lot in the past, and it's a lot clearer.
Okay.
As Good as It Gets, with Jack Nicholson and
Helen Hunt.
Helen Hunt and Greg Kinnear.
Yep.
So there's this amazing scene, and I like the movie. I mean, I don't think it's a fantastic movie, but I think it's a really good movie. Mm-hmm. But there's a fantastic scene in that movie that ever since it came out and I saw it, I use it as a teaching tool all the time. And it's pretty early on, and there's no dialogue in it. And it's simply Jack Nicholson comes home. His character comes home. He does the whole thing with the doors where he locks and unlocks all of his locks 50 times, right? And then he goes into the bathroom, right? And he turns on the water, but only the hot water, to the point where it's steam rising out of his sink. And then he opens up his medicine cabinet, and there are 50 bars of soap wrapped in plastic, right? He takes one out, he unwraps it, he scrunches up the plastic, he throws it into the garbage can, he furiously washes his hands with it, right? Then he takes the full bar of soap that's remaining and throws that out, rinses his hands off under the scalding hot water, opens up the medicine cabinet again, takes out another bar of soap, unwraps it, scrunches the wrapper up, throws it away, and does the same thing, right? And what I've just described to you is a bunch of actions. And you have a very clear picture of a guy who's got OCD right now. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now, if this were a novel, I'm not saying that you couldn't do that, but probably you would be talking about what he's thinking rather than seeing what he's doing.
So advice to screenplay writers is to be concise and put behavior into visual action.
Well, the screenwriting process by its nature is it's concise.
Because we're talking. Remember, I'm folding this into the rewriting process,
Right.
and so it's 30. You replacing 30 to 40% of a screenplay. I know because I've known you long enough to know what you mean, but I want to make sure that it's communicated clearly that we're talking about. For example, you use that scene. What's the technical term for describing that scene that you just described on a screenplay? That would be a what? A window?
Well, no, it's a scene that, and again, there's no necessarily technical term, but the word that you're referring to is something that, again, I learned at Writers Boot Camp, and it's just a label for an idea.
Right.
The idea is windows are little tiny moments that show us behavior, and through those little tiny moments, we learn about the characters. We learn about who they are. So, for example, opening up the cabinet and taking out a bar of soap and unwrapping it, just the fact that it's wrapped and there are 50 bars of it, that alone, that's a window, right? That is a window into a very unique person right there, because who keeps 50 bars of soap wrapped in plastic in their medicine cabinet?
Right.
That's a window.
Okay.
The fact that he scrubs his hands and then rinses and then throws away the rest of the soap, that's a window. The fact that he takes out another bar of soap and does the same thing, that's a window.
So when we're talking then about rewriting and trying to find out, throwing out action lines and replacing them with better or more highly developed action lines from a brainstorming process, that's what's called rewriting.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's part of it, sure.
Thinking about what's the concept, what's the genre, what's the story I'm trying to tell, what's the
Yes.
pacing,
Who's
and
my
then,
character?
right.
And how would my character what would my character do in this situation? And what choices, and then going a step further than that, what choices could I make for what my character might do that are the most alive, the most dynamic, the most interesting? Usually, I mean, there are tons of choices, of course, that you could make for any single moment. Try them out. What's the best one? Usually it's not going to be your first one, right? And that's true for every single moment of your script. That's true for the windows, what we just talked about. It could be true for, the dynamic of a relationship, right? If you decide, right, that, for example, the relationship between the two major characters that you had dreamed up in your first draft is not going to be sufficient enough to help you. It's not going to be the best way to communicate the journey that you want to communicate.
The
for your main
relationship between your two main characters.
Yeah, let's just say
not
that
gonna
you
be
decide.
enough. Could you use an example?
Well, let's just. I mean, let's just say that you decide. Let's just say that I don't know, that in the first draft of Lethal Weapon,
Okay.
right, that that the Danny Glover character was also sort of, off his rocker, was also not all there mentally, just like the Mel Gibson character is,
Yeah.
right? That you could make the argument in your discovery process, in your rewriting process. Well, what I really want to do is I want to show this journey of this guy who is suicidal in the beginning and he hates his life and he doesn't think there's anything left for him. And by the end, he is full of life, right? That's the journey that I want him to go on. He's full of life. Maybe he starts a new relationship. He doesn't want to kill himself anymore. He's motivated, whatever the case may be, right? I might decide, well, someone who's just like him might not be the best dynamic, might not challenge him in the ways I need him to be challenged in order to make that journey happen, to get from suicidal to hopeful or whatever, right? So I decide, okay, well, I need to bring new ideas for what this dynamic is. Well, what if he's a sort of close to the vest family guy? How does that inform my existing scenes? What ideas does it give me for new scenes? What does it tell me about the change? How does that change the relationship? How does that add to how well I'm able to get my main character from this point A at the beginning to point B at the end? All those things.
Well, that was fascinating. I'm on board.